What up, y'all? It is our Saturday night secret sermon. We are here for our secret teachings of Jesus. How is everybody? I am frazzled, I have to be honest. Exhausted, basically just coming down out of a trauma response. Like, tonight was so insane that I'm like cold and need to wear layers, I think just because of shock. Like we were more busy than we've ever been, and we were grossly understaffed. We just lost people recently, and then there were people like out sick, so we were severely shorthanded. And then unusually the entire restaurant was booked at 4:45. So like the moment we opened our doors, everyone's section was completely full. Oh my God. Like, it's literally like being expected to be omnipresent, but like at a restaurant level. It was really awesome. And then it went on like that until we closed our kitchen. So I'm insane. As usual, though, on Saturday night, the dilemma is that it's like I'm so tired and I never feel like doing secret teachings of Jesus. However, one important lesson that I learned in Kabbalah is that when there is an act of sharing the light and you do not feel like doing it, and then you do it anyway, it reveals even more light. So the worse I feel on Saturday night, the more important I feel like this episode will be. And then I can't skip it. So I am bound. I am bound by my word. So we are here to read out of the Gospel of Philip. Basically, this segment is, if you have never been here before, welcome. I wanted to read the Gnostic Gospels and did not know when I'd have time to do that. So I thought it would be fun for us all to do it together on Saturday nights for like a little secret sermon. And so we've been working through the Gospel of Philip. If you go into the Secret Teachings of Jesus playlist on my channel, Light, Love, Magick, which you should definitely go ahead and subscribe to. It's free. Just press a button. Go to my channel. There's the playlist there. And if you want to go back further, there's the Secret Book of James. It's got a lot more dialogue, a lot of more acting scenes. The Gospel of Philip has been this really far out kind of book. It's got a lot of these portions that are isolated thoughts, and they're very cryptic, and so they're meant to like chew on and meditate on, and they stretch your mind and they stretch your consciousness. They also have, it seems, as it were, a lot of Kabbalistic references in them. So I go through those as I catch them. And basically, pick out a portion that I read for the first time right before I start recording, and then we read it together. And then I'll go line by line and unpack it, giving you sort of the insights and downloads that I'm getting in real time. So I'm not a theologian. This is just for fun. So everybody calm down. Get a hold of yourselves. Give her a pill. So let's see. This week, and I do like to give a note that it's very beneficial for us to study this late at night. The midnight hour is a very powerful time of day. It's a liminal space between the end of one period of time and the beginning of another. So the veil is very thin. So there's this opening of connection, a more direct connection to the light. Yesterday's video, we talked about, we touched on the significance of Shabbat, and as it were, as an opening in time to connect to the light of source. Similar idea, there's a heightened quality of light that you can connect with around midnight, between midnight and dawn, because every day, starting at midnight, that's the beginning, that's the seed level of the day, and that's usually when the most potential is there, the most positivity. And the and it kind of wanes, it dissipates as the light comes to its peak, and then the afternoon starts, creeping towards night. So the most positive hours are between midnight and dawn. So those are very powerful times to do things, to study, to say your prayers. If you're ever awakened in the middle of the night, it might actually be because Spirit wants you to pray for something. So really, if you start to become awoken, in the middle of the night, don't just try to go back to sleep. Say your prayers, pray about whatever's on your heart. And if there's nothing that you can think of, just say prayers that anything that you need to be praying for will come on your heart and consciousness, and to just cover all the bases while you're there. It's always good to pray if you wake up in the middle of the night. So there's a lot of power available. And there's also during this time of night, there's this surrounding light that is very protective, and it helps you absorb the wisdom in a more, in a gentler way that helps you embody it without having to go through a lot of chaotic process to embody it. So I don't know if you've ever noticed that, if you've ever bought a spirituality book, it's the moment you open the book and start reading the introduction, it's the phone rings and it's exactly the challenge that you were trying to address, coming to challenge you in that moment. So it's whenever you tell the universe, I am opening myself to growth, especially particularly spiritual growth, it's going to be great, we're going to start testing you. It's not going to be fun. You're going to be oh no, why did I do this? It's too late. I could have just been a vapid, shallow person. Where did I go wrong? Believe me, all the time, I'm oh my God, why can't I just be a vapid, shallow person that doesn't have a channel? They can just go home and do whatever they want. Who doesn't know? Who can't see the tragedy, how great things could be, and how shit they are? If only. It's too late for us. We're here, people. So now we're in it. So now we got to study because we know better. Yes. So learning this time of night will help you not have to walk out some crazy process in order to embody the lesson. So that's always good too. All right. So tonight's portion, it actually ties in with my teacher, David, actually brought this up the other day in our deep consciousness class in preparation for Purim. And yeah, I can kind of vaguely remember what he was getting at, but it's generally what we're going to talk about. So the portion that we're covering tonight is called Christ Arose, Then Died. Christ arose, then died. Those who say that the Master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. If someone is not first resurrected, wouldn't that person die? As God lives, that one would die. We had a footnote, but it was just that it's talking about the papyrus was damaged and they were still looking for a restoration there. They're we don't know how to help you with this. It's okay, I know what's going on. Okay, those who say the Master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. If someone is not first resurrected, wouldn't that person die? As God lives, that one would die. So I know this sounds confusing because it's no, Jesus was resurrected before he died. Otherwise, wouldn't he have just died? You're wait, what? I don't understand. So basically, this process of resurrection that they're talking about, that Jesus arose before he died, is the process of ascension of the soul. It's the rise in consciousness. I don't have it on me. I should have our chart. But if you look at, you know what? I'm going to get our chart. I'm going to wait. We'll talk and then we'll get our chart. So the Christ arose. Actually, I'm just going to get the chart. I'm just going to pause it. Hey, guess what? Chart. We have our chart. Okay. So Jesus arose before he died. This is the map of the universe. It is the map of the Godhead. It is the map of the human soul. It is the map of the path of consciousness, going up like this, our raising in consciousness. And this is the path of manifestation, coming down. When we receive light from the Creator, it comes down through these spherot here, these circles. These are dimensions of consciousness, okay? So, and this here represents Christ consciousness. This up here is pure abstract light, no gender. This is the supernal feminine. This is the supernal masculine. This is like the primary colors of the universe right here. The primary energies. The masculine, feminine, and neutral columns, just like electricity. So, when we're talking about the light coming down to us, it flows this way. If we're going to be specific, it goes like in a lightning bolt, like that. Basically, when it's talking about Christ arose before he died, that means that Christ had perfected and had risen in every area of consciousness in human development up to here, up to Christ consciousness. And so from here, this is ascension, right? When Elijah ascended, he had already ascended his consciousness. That's why he was able to just walk away from earth and leave in the body. So basically, we go through this process called perfecting the vessel. Because the universe is made at the ultimate core, at the ultimate root, it consists of two parts, light and vessel. Light before vessel was before existence at all. It was when everything was just all isness and there was no reality. It was just all one thing included, all up here in the negative levels of non-existence. And so when that tension built to a point of combustion, light created a vessel so that there would be other to share with. It was an act of sharing. It was an act of desire to share. So basically, the process that we go through when we take all the details out of it in life is that we come here as a soul to perfect our vessel, which means to do the soul correction, to perfect our vessel so that we can receive the light, so that we can be the ultimate vessel for receiving the light, so that we can receive all the light that God is, and we don't have to go through a lot of chaos, and we can ground it, and we receive for the sake of sharing, not receiving for the self alone. So we go through this process where we perfect our desire to receive. And this goes from a desire to receive for the self alone to a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. It goes from a consciousness of trying to pacify the flesh, the body consciousness, to do what's easy, to do what's comfortable for us, to do what we're, usually do. And go outside of our comfort zone and push ourselves to evolve, to grow, to do what's not easy for us, right? For the sake of sharing, and not for the receiving for the self alone. So sometimes that can get a bit vague. Sometimes soul correction asks us very murky questions, and sometimes you're like, wow, I don't know whether my tikkune, which is a word that means soul correction, is to take this action or restrain from this action, If you're the kind of person that's ready to pop off at the mouth and say something all the time if something comes up, when you're triggered, then maybe your correction is to start watching what you say and not just reacting and going for it and saying it. Maybe the restriction for you, the growth for you, would be to hold your tongue and to not feel like you need to be right or need to be, you know, take on that battle or whatever. Just take yourself out of it. However, if you're the type of person that's always staying out of it, that always keeps silent to keep the peace and to appease everyone, then your tikkun is probably to speak up for yourself. So whatever is usually the most uncomfortable, challenging thing for you, the bigger stretch, that's usually what the assignment is. So this process of perfecting the vessel to receive the light for the sake of sharing, not for receiving for the self alone. Also not receiving for instant gratification, right? But receiving to be the better vessel. Okay. I feel like there's so much that I want to say about this that it's becoming bottlenecked. Those who say that the master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. Okay. And so, as you arise on these paths, these are like the governing forces of the universe. They're also 10 dimensions of consciousness. This 11th dimension here, this is like an unmanifest state of being. It's not actually a dimension. It's another thing. The paths in between are like the archetypal experiences and challenges that we face in order to embody these these levels of consciousness. And so we have to go through these challenges and we have to face these things, right? Like the examples I was just giving. In my own life, I had a conversation I didn't want to have today with my dad. And I've never wanted to have that conversation. And it just kind of came out today. And I was not planning it. And I usually would just hold back because he's not open. He's not emotionally available. And to be quite honest, he's, kind of a little bit, in the past, he was a little bit scary, a little bit intimidating. Doesn't take feedback well, if at all. So I have usually just not said much. And then the people around my dad are always defending him. Think about what he went through, blah, blah, blah. And, think about his feelings and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that sounds nice. And I went along with that for a really long time. But eventually it was just me silencing myself and putting myself down and devaluing myself to prop up someone's unhealthy ego and support their abusive behavior towards everyone else. And because I knew that I didn't want to speak up, I knew that I needed to. And I felt like it was being presented to me in all the readings coming up. It's been a thing. And so, yeah, I won't know until the end of days, but I didn't say anything disrespectful to my father. I didn't even say anything critical. I just stated facts about his actions and how it made me feel. And didn't go over very well. But I feel that I was trying to do tikkun correction in that moment. But it wasn't easy and it wasn't comfortable. But it was for the sake of the rest of my siblings too, because we all have the same problems with them. So who knows? I did my best. We'll see. Those who say the master first died and then arose are wrong. For he arose and then died. Okay, that's what I was wanting to say. So there's a point in the Bible. I don't know whether it's in the Gnostics or it's in the traditional New Testament, or if it's in I can't remember where it is, but they talk about Mary Magdalene being possessed by 7 demons, and then Christ exorcising her of the 7 demons, and then she was able to attain 7 powers. These demons and powers that they're talking about are like these archetypal like dimensions of consciousness that we are grappling with. They have their shadow side. When they're out of balance, they're in vice mode. And when they're in balance, like we're always trying to bring these into balance so that they're not vices, so that they are virtuous powers within us. So Mary, when she overcame her demons, she was ascending on the path by facing them, by doing the correction, right? By overcoming her anger, the demon of anger. She was able to use that anger and harness it and transmute it into a power, into something that would serve her. So when you overcome these demons within you, you aren't subservient to them. You aren't possessed by them anymore, but they are servants to you. You have that power. You wield that power and you have that sovereignty. Now, I'm not telling you guys to summon demons. Do not do that. They are very dangerous and they do not make friends with people. The trend a couple of years ago with people like playing with demons and things like this, that's really dangerous. Don't do that. This, however, it's different. You are already grappling with these demons. They are the archetypal demons that we all wrestle with. This is the soul correction. This is the human condition. So up here, these are the supernal triad. These 3 dimensions. These aren't really part of our human consciousness. It's above that. This is part of like the building blocks of reality. So here then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is called Zarenpin. It's a realm, a division, a category of part of the tree. But these are the 7 levels of consciousness, the 7 dimensions, the 7 powers, the 7 demons. All of those. It was the soul correction that Mary was going through that was ascending her. She was ascending and harnessing the powers of the Spirit as she went. Same with Jesus. Jesus was already risen. He'd already risen before his body was like turned off. The soul had been perfected. The soul was perfect. He was always perfect, like he was perfected walking in. But he still went through challenges. He still had to go through human experiences and the awakening of consciousness. He felt everything. He experienced everything as a human. So he arose before he died. He transcended the human condition of being trapped by our ego. And he was liberated. And Mary was liberated and able to ascend that way. Was risen first before he died. So yeah, it's like Christ was ascended and he probably could have just walked out, right? But he knew that he had a purpose to serve. And so he kept on with his mission, even though he was an enemy of the state, even though he knew that the Roman Empire had it out for him. Jesus kept stirring up people to create change. He kept pointing out that people were enslaved mentally, emotionally. He was trying to free them of this. The physical enslavements around us of fear, lack, and doubt, constant struggle, the human condition. You know, we're equally as divine as we are human. But our divinity is something that we have to work to take sovereignty over and claim. It's always within us. It's just these powers are dormant. Our consciousness of it is dormant. Our living in the truth of really knowing who we are and what we are is dormant. If it wasn't, We would be laying on hands, healing people in instants. We could resurrect the dead if we wanted to. Although it's not really, like, even when Jesus rose Lazarus from the dead, he was like, I mean, you guys realize that he is going to die eventually anyway. Like, I'm bringing you back now. But, you know, is he really going to live? Like, is he going to appreciate life this time? Like, he's still going to die. You're just delaying the inevitable. You're just not accepting. You're not in surrender. You're trying to grasp. You're trying to hold on. You're trying to control. But he's like, but I'll bring him back. It's fine. But if we could all go around resurrecting the dead, I don't think it would be a good idea. We already have a population problem on this planet. And people are already, like, unwilling to let go. It's an impossible thing to ask of us, and yet we have to learn to do it over and over and over again. So getting your mind free of the fact that the body is not what's alive. The soul, the consciousness is what's alive. And so when the body dies off, like when you overcome death, it's like you have awakened to the point where you are like, oh, this is literally just the flesh suit. I don't even need this. I can peel it off and I will still be awake. I will still be here. I will still have a consciousness. I will still be a spirit. But the thing is that we have to be in this body to change, to be effective in this life, to make change. Jesus, there's an archetypal character, like the hero has 1,000 faces, Joseph Campbell kind of thing, but there is like an archetypal character that you may have heard people make reference to, but like the reluctant Messiah. Jesus wasn't like trying to be out there like, hey, like y'all, like he wasn't out there like Kanye West, like I'm the Messiah, worship me, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't thinking like, oh, it was going to glorify him and make him so great. Like he knew what he was getting into. He knew the ultimate end of the story was going to be his demise. He knew how it was going to go. And he did it anyway. And sorry, I'm kind of upset because like, not upset, but like it's really moving to me when I think about it, because it's like, it must have been so frustrating for Jesus because most of the people around him had no idea what he was talking about. They really didn't get the point of everything that he was doing. Even at the last minute, the disciples were still thinking that they were gonna like take over the government. Like it was gonna be all physical, like it was a material, physical, flesh like pursuit. And it was never gonna be that way. And he knew that he was gonna be martyred. So he wasn't out there like, I'm going to be the Messiah. I'm the chosen one. I'm the son of God. It wasn't like that. It was a humbling, great weight to carry. A heavy crown to sit on his head. And at the end of it, betrayal by people he loved. People denying him and selling him out. And he did it anyway. Because he knew that it was he that had to do it. Because in order to have, like he received the status of Messiah, not for the sake of receiving for him, for his own glorification, to take over in power, but for the sake of receiving for the sake of others. That was the perfection of the vessel. And that's what we try to strive toward, having that perfected vessel. The thing about the sacrifice of Jesus, him being the physical sacrifice on the cross, the technical need for a sacrifice in a spiritual ritual is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transmuted. And so when you need a miracle, you need energy. When you take darkness and turn it into light, when you take hate and turn it into acceptance, when you take division and turn it into unity, when you take fear and turn it into determination and courage, that is spiritual alchemy. And in that process, you are breaking open that fear and releasing that energy and redirecting it into determination. Do you see how that goes? People would sacrifice a lamb hoping that the release of that life force of the lamb would be redirected into their prayer or into the blessings coming over their family or whatever. The goat, sacrificial goats, whatnot. It's all about, you need energy to create alchemy, to create magic, for miracles to happen. So the breaking open of the flesh, the breaking open of bread, the breaking open of Christ. The reason why you have to have like a spotless heifer or calf is because the more pristine and precious the vessel that you're cracking open, the more pristine and precious the energy that's being released, the more powerful it is. So Christ, having been a perfected human being, having risen to a Messiah level of consciousness, was the power that was required in order to save the souls of mankind. In order to break these barriers that keep us from coming up this high, this had to be broken open so that it could be shared in every direction with us, right? This is the redeeming that's happening right here. All of this going through that center, that Christ center. So Christ had this perfected consciousness, and then at this level, this had to be broken open so that humanity could benefit. It's like a tuning fork. When you strike a tuning fork, whatever you're tuning, it wants to find that pitch. Like that's what it wants to find resonance with that. It wants to find affinity with that pitch. Christ had to come here to even introduce this note into humanity so that we could find that pitch, right? And it was like doing the tuning fork while he was here on his mission, as he was traveling, the Middle East during that time in his ministry. The tuning fork, raising the vibration of the planet, raising consciousness, awakening people to that consciousness. He had to be broken open so that that consciousness, that seismic, cataclysmic aftershock would reverberate through the entire planet and stay there. It was such a perfect sacrifice that it was like it snapped everything in. And there was all of a sudden this note that hadn't been here on earth yet. And it was this level of consciousness, that level of unconditional love and acceptance and forgiveness and compassion and kindness and goodness that had never been embodied before. And so Christ had to have a horrific death. And be martyred in such a way that it would be remembered forever. And never be forgotten. And that energy would stay in the world for always. And again, this was not for this receiving for the sake of the self. This was receiving for the sake of sharing, right? Because yes, Jesus has all the power in the world, and he is King of Kings and all of that, but it wasn't to his own glorification that he accepted that took on that yoke. It was for the grace of mankind. Those who say that the master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. If someone is not first resurrected, wouldn't that person die? As God lives, that one would die. So, yes, we can follow in Christ's footsteps towards ascending. If we don't, if we never awaken to the reality that there's more than what we can feel, smell, taste, and touch, then we haven't awakened the kingdom within. We aren't really alive. We're not fully living. We're not really online. We're just flesh bots going through the motions. We're just bacteria. And that person does die because they are always fixated with death looming. Every day they die, waiting for death. On a mental level at some point, or they live in a state of death. But if, it's funny because I feel like when we die, when our body dies, I feel like we do reincarnate a certain number of times or whatever. But maybe for a minute we're suspended in the interrealm. And I think that during that time, there is a process of getting your bearings. And I think that people who choose to be on the path of consciousness and conscious development within life, I think they're more prepared when they die. And they kind of are like, oh, yeah, I know how this works. Like, I'm a woo-woo person. I know how this works. But if, say, for instance, you're a person that doesn't believe in anything that happens after the afterlife, you may think that you're just dead for a long time. What if you're just there, you're like, I'm dead. And you're like, well, wait, maybe I'm not dead. I don't know. I'm not in a body, I'm disembodied, but like, who am I? I'm talking, like, who am I talking to? Right? Or maybe, if that person just dies and has no experience, and then they're resurrected again, or, reincarnated again, only to start where they left off, right? The thing about suicide is that you'll be reincarnated with the same problems. So you need to always be just turning around and facing your problems. If you're like, this job sucks, I want to get another job. It's like, well, figure out what's going wrong in yourself first. Try to do that correction before you just go have another job, because the same problems will probably be waiting for you there. They'll probably follow you around until you address them directly. Those who say that the master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. If someone is not first resurrected, wouldn't that person die? As God lives, that one would die. I feel like we might have covered everything that I wanted to say. Christ was a perfected vessel because he had a true desire to receive for the sake of sharing and not for the self alone. He put himself out of his comfort zone in the worst way. I just nodded. And now we model ourselves after Christ. And then as we are awakened to that truth, we realize that, sorry guys, I've been crying. I have a snot. I'll wipe out my shirt. Like a human Kleenex. I lost my train of thought. Those who say that the master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. If someone is not first resurrected, wouldn't that person die? I mean, I just feel like it's an even just basic understanding of the awakening of consciousness. It's not until we're awakened that we're really living anyway. Until we really wake up to the fact that all that we see is really the illusion. And what we don't see is really the reality. What we don't see is what's creating the reality. What we do see that seems like on the surface to be very solid and flesh and definite is actually very negotiable. It's very mutable. It's very changeable. And so it's very unpermanent. Everything that you see around you has a shelf life. It's already dead. It's already rotten. It's already dust. But what's inside, our spirit, our soul, the Christ that lives in us, in our own Christ center in our heart, our higher self, all of that is eternal. It can't be damaged. It can't be lost. It is forever and ever and ever yours. And on a spirit level, in your spirit, you're already perfected and completely whole with no correction needed. But it's the soul, right, that we keep bringing with us to do work with. It gives us a process. It gives us something to do. It gives Creator a way to experience all the multifaceted experiences and perceptions and views of life through us, through each other. All right, let's wrap it up. Christ arose and then died. Those who say that the master first died and then arose are wrong. For he first arose and then died. If someone is not first resurrected, wouldn't that person die? As God lives, that one would die. All right, you guys, as God lives is there's no beginning and no end. It's eternal beingness. And I think finding affinity with the light, I've been trying to learn how to be eternal, unwavering, unchanging, and find that sense of deep stability within me that I can be, yes, I might feel sad and feel happy and feel excited and feel enraged and blah, blah, blah. But on a core level, I want to always feel so much certainty that I never feel like I have any kind of urgency that I have to act, that there's no scarcity, that there's no lack, that there's no, whatever's mine is already mine. I want to be so certain that I want to be like Jesus, taking his sweet ass time to go to see Lazarus. Everybody's like, send for Jesus! Get him here! Lazarus is at death's door! Jesus shows up and he's like, hey, everybody's like, ooh. Somebody call for a pizza guy. Everybody's like, Jesus, you've been dicking around. What have you been doing? Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. We're devastated. We're beside ourselves. Don't you love him? And he's like, yeah, like, we're going to get it taken care of. Like, no worries. Everybody take a breath. You too, Lazarus. And then he raised him from the dead because he was so certain that it's like, hey, he'll still be waiting when I get there. It'll all be fine. So I want to be like that certain. I want to be like, I'm taking my time to raise the dead because I'm like, it's going to be fine. Lazarus is going to die again anyway. It'll be fine. All right, you guys. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your night. There was some talking in circles, a little bit of rambling, but we did get under 45 minutes. It's a cool 35, so pretty proud of us there. Yeah, I will see y'all tomorrow for our weekly energy forecast for tomorrow night. It'll give us kind of our energetic weather for the week to look forward to. And I hope we have some good energy to look forward to. This week was a little bit of chaos, but I don't know. We'll ground it in and we'll turn it into gold with our spiritual alchemy. All right, y'all. Ciao.